Andrade has returned to AEW, I think at the surprise to most people, because obviously he left AEW a couple of years ago, whenever the hell it was, went to WWE, then got released from WWE, apparently for disciplinary reasons. We do not know for sure. Don't think anybody's confirmed that. And then, yes, last night on Dynamite, he turned back up on AEW. As always, everybody is melting down. Let's talk about it. Now, actually, I've seen two sides of the coin to this, which is no surprise. I'm sure it's coming from tribalism, but I do think there's an argument to be had. Obviously, the whoever's are going, oh, it's the best thing ever, and then the blevers are being like, oh, I can't believe AEW had done this. I saw one stupid social media post going, Tony Khan is the worst boss ever. Yeah, it's terrible when somebody starts a wrestling company and pays wrestlers millions of dollars and increases the price cap for wrestlers. It's awful, terrible. Let's hope it goes away and we never have to deal with it again. I really don't think this is a big deal. I know, Simon, you always say things like this. I speak from my heart, right? I'm a corny so-and-so, but I would always be honest with you, otherwise I wouldn't be able to have a platform. That would be super boring. But I think sometimes we put wrestling in too much of a bubble. This is no different from football, soccer, NFL, any other sport, from movies, from, I don't know much about book culture. But so many times people have been cancelled or they've been fired or they've been kicked to the curb, and all of a sudden they make a grand comeback, and sometimes they do go back to the same people they worked with before. And sometimes these people make up, and sometimes they fall apart. It's like Oasis at the moment, right? Oasis is never going to get back together. Now they are back together. Could they fall out again? Absolutely. It's like Punk going back. Could him and WW fall out again? Absolutely. We do not know. I don't think because Andrade apparently did have some backstage issues. I think he got sent home from one episode of AEW a few years ago. So it's not like he hasn't had due course before. But if he does it again and Tony Khan decides, you know what, it's not worth it, all right. And if he stays there and it's a great career, all right. And if one day he outlasts his AEW contract and he goes back to WWE, all right. I hate the way I said that. I annoyed myself, but I just don't think there is as my hood comes off, I just don't think it's a thing. I think we're sort of making mountains out of molehills here. I don't think you make Tony Khan a bad boss for giving somebody a second chance. I think everybody deserves a second chance, and arguably WWE gave him that second chance. I also don't know the finer details of what he did do backstage in AEW. I would imagine a huge drawback going back to WWE was his wife, then Charlotte. They're not together anymore. Don't know what happened there. So it's all speculation, but I'm certainly not going to sit on my high horse and pretend like this is a bad move. If Andrade comes back and has some great matches, sounds like he's going to have a match with Kenny Omega. Not sure if they fought before, but certainly feels like he's at a higher level than he was when he left. And if it all works out and it makes the television better, that's good for me. If he comes in and makes the television worse, well, one, that would suck, but also you'll be taken off television. We've seen that time and time again. And he got a massive pop. It was a cool moment, especially because this was 6 years of, Dynamite. It was a 6-year anniversary because it started in 2019, which is totally terrifying. So you do want moments like that in order to kind of allow the show to live in people's brains. And I was surprised. I saw him come back. I thought, well, that's kind of expected, all things considered. Well, it depends how you see wrestling. I think we all accept that never say never is the catchphrase here. And then people it's just the idea that if he gets into trouble again, that somehow is on Tony Khan. Well, if he doesn't fire him, then brings him back for another time. But I don't think you can worry about what other people are doing in other companies, especially if you come up with a good idea for him. So I hope he does come back. Hope he totally smashes it. Hope he has a great match with Kenny Omega. And then we can just all move on and have a cup of tea and a scone. If you're British, that's what we love to do. I think we should talk about the fact it was the 6-year anniversary show as well. Like, there were some goods and bads and always. You can check out my ups and downs over on What Culture Wrestling right now. And while you are here, please do subscribe, just interact with this video. I'm struggling with the algorithm, so let's start begging. Why the flub not? But I do think it's incredible. I'm not saying you have to like AEW. You can think it's the worst wrestling promotion in the history of mankind. You're allowed that opinion, and I respect you for it. But just looking at it from a data point of view, a numbers point of view, to be here 6 years long, and Dynamite is still somewhat of it's a massive success. So I was going to try and go around the houses and talk to these weird people that look into TV ratings and don't compare it to anything else. It's a huge success. It's a profitable company. It's absolutely smashing it, and it has allowed the wrestling industry to take a massive step forward. And it's increased, like we say, the money that wrestlers get paying is giving people an option of where to work. But it sounds like what Andrade did was on Andrade's back, but there were wrestlers before who got kicked to the curb and they had nowhere to go, and that absolutely sucked. They were in the wilderness, and if you wanted to perform in Western television, there was one place, and it never really works. But through all the doom and gloom and all the issues, and there have been, just to use the term, the ups and the downs, to still be here. And again, I would arguably, I don't know the money, but I think financially they are better than ever from this new television deal. And to have sort of built their own stars, like I don't really know who Darby Allin was before any of this. I mean, Hangman and Page I kind of did because of the indie scene, but nowhere near as much as I do now. I would say all of them. I would say MJF. I would say exposing the Young Bucks to a mainstream audience. Kenny Omega was different. Kenny Omega always kind of, existed in his own little bubble. But there's a Danny Garcia. I don't want to start naming people because I'll forget loads. But Julia Hart, a Sky Blue, a Britt Baker. Obviously, she's not around anymore. But it's just I just find it mad that we've managed to get 6 years down the line. Like, where does the time go? It makes me feel very scared about the future because I'm going to be in my grave before I know it and then crying my eyes out or just laying there. It's not something we need to talk about on a wrestling video. But it's absolutely huge. If you think about the peak of Nitro, you can argue that the peak of Nitro was, when the NWO blew up, not really. Before the NWO blew up, Nitro sort of had its foothold a little bit. But that sort of major streak of wrestling television, when WCW was beating Monday Night Raw, was like 2 years. I'm not saying that AEW Dynamite has ever beaten WCW in the ratings. It's not a comparison. But I'm just saying I still look at WCW. Just me putting WCW over, pal. I still look at WCW as this sort of massive wrestling entity that I have so many memories from. And I think the Dynamite is continuing to go. And listen, in the year 2000, I think most people were like, oh man, I'm a bit scared about World Championship Wrestling. It could go away. I've never had that feeling with AEW. Even when some of the stories were coming along that some people didn't like, which again is your prerogative, it didn't feel like when WCW totally went off the rails. It's not what I'm doing here. I'm comparing, which I don't mean to do. I just think it's an incredible feat. And I would imagine they do get to 10 years. I don't see why they wouldn't. It could be in a completely different guise to where they're in now. But I just remember watching that first show back in 2019. Nobody really knew what to expect. And, that first Dynamite was such a huge success. They got 13,000 people in the building? It could have been even more. And did it well over 1 million people sort of in the ratings. And of course, people will say, oh, it's an absolute dumpster fire now because ratings are lower and lower and lower. But that's a different conversation for a different day. Let's get rid of all these other hats and just wear the fan hat. To be able to have, I wouldn't even call it an alternative. It's an alternative to WWE if you were going to write it out in a sentence. But just to have a second mainstream American wrestling company that does do things, they sort of play by their own rules. I don't feel like I'm watching WWE anymore when I'm watching AEW. And maybe there were times when there was a crossover. But just to have that, as and when you want to tune in, I just think it's hugely important and it's great. And again, we have created all these brand new stars, Hangman and Page right now, sort of propping up the entire company as the baby face with the World Championship. I just love it. And I think it's awesome. And I think it's a proper clap on the back moment. And people go, oh, Simon, how much was a Tony Khan check? But the issue there is you tell me I take a Triple H check as well. The truth being, as I come to my own decade anniversary of making wrestling YouTube content, which is terrifying once more, for reasons we've already laid out, I've never taken a check or a cent from anybody. And I really love I don't overall love the state of the wrestling industry now. I did about a year ago. There are now some other just choices being made that I personally struggle with, but maybe we'll talk about them on a separate occasion because I always like to try and focus on the content. But it is absolutely awesome, I think. And long may it continue. And that's the same for all these companies. I would like New Japan to sort of get its sea legs underneath it again so it could grow to the point where it was around about the same time. And I'm sure it will because wrestling always goes like this. But 6 years, man. That has flown on by. Totally nuts. Otherwise, I suppose the major takeaways were Andrade joining the Don Callis family and the clone, Hologram clone joining the Don Callis family. I don't want to say right now that I think it's too many people. I am worried about family occasions. How the hell are you going to fit around that many people around a table? We will have to buy a brand new table. But, I need to see how this is going to play out. We teased Takeshita versus Okada in the tag team match. I think that will see Takeshita leave and probably win the unified title. And he could win the IWGP Championship as well because he's got his Zack Sabre Jr. match coming up. So maybe this really is going to be a stepping out party for him to become a babyface. Otherwise, though, the big thing that stood out to me was the Samoa Joe, Hangman, and Page stuff. Now, I love the match, already confirmed for Wrestle Dream. Was a little bit confused about how this came about. We have the six-man tag, and, it kind of looks like Hobbs is going to tag Samoa Joe. I guess so. But basically, Hangman Adam Page takes the tag and eventually wins the match. And then it turns out Samoa Joe is super duper mad, especially because when Hangman returned his trios titles to him, he didn't really felt like he passed it across in the right way. I did enjoy this trios because, of course, we have Mox and Hangman going at it again. And I thought that was a nice callback to what they'd done only a few months ago. I think sometimes you do want to keep people separate, but sometimes if the opportunity does arise, you want to remind people, oh, we could go back to this at a moment's notice. But Samoa Joe then gets mad, gets disrespected. I thought the two promos that came after it from both guys were important. important to try and double underline, without the opportunities help, Samoa Joe and the opportunities, you likely wouldn't have won that All In. You likely would have been screwed, so you should be kinder to me. And Hangman being like, dude, you know, if you want to fight, we'll fight, man. Like, I understand where you're coming from, but you're a little bit of a baby too. I wouldn't say it's an overall problem with Dynamite or in AEW, but I just felt like you could have eked this out. Like, Wrestle Dream, we still got a few weeks. I think we could have done that here. A little bit of teasing, and the next week a little bit of teasing, and then have a proper blow up. Because I don't believe that Samoa Joe would get so mad about not getting a tag, especially when he was on the same team as Hangman Adam Page, that it would blow up into a world title feud. So maybe we hit the fast forward button just a little bit there. But sometimes, right, if you're going to the ice cream parlor and all you want is ice cream, and you have to take sort of, you know, the worst route to get there, the journey does become unimportant because you just want that damn ice cream, that cream of ice, and to put it in your face. And I'll always take Samoa Joe versus Hangman, especially because as Samoa Joe made clear too, you've never beaten me, dude. You're the world champion. That seems very interesting, and Hangman will win. I do think Hangman Adam Page needs to go into a bit more of a death feud, but I suppose we're waiting for MJF to come back. He could always cash in his magical contract, to be completely honest with you, and we could do it that way with him beating Samoa Joe. Didn't Samoa Joe do something with MJF and his championship when he had the Triple B? I don't know if that's true or not. That's just in my head. I may be making it up. But really good match and something I want to see. I kind of felt like we could have put more time into the build. Just a little criticism. Really enjoyed the main event. And of course, we had Toni Storm coming back on this show as well to cut a promo saying, Chris, I need to face you. And she's like, serious Toni now, or serious Storm. Massively surprised that we got what chance on an AEW show, especially towards Toni Storm. Again, you're allowed to do whatever you want. Just took me by surprise. She came out after the main event, which was Chris Statlander. And who the flub did she tag with? I can't even remember. Chris Statlander and somebody taking on Wheeler Yuta and Marina Shafir. Darby Allin, of course it was. Somebody may not have any sleep this weekend. That would be me. I mean, the thumbtack spot was disgusting. I don't know why. We've seen way worse, but seeing somebody go bare feet into thumbtacks made me feel all oogly-boogly in my tum-tum. I just thought it was fun. I just thought it was so over the top. Darby Allin is how he walks around, I do not know. And the controversial point, I suppose, was the ending. You will not be surprised to hear that I liked it. Because Wheeler Yuta tries to throw powder into Chris's eyes. She moves out of the way. It goes into Marina Shafir's eyes. And because she's blind and apparently now deaf, she applies the choke to Wheeler. That leads to a 450, leads to a coffin drop 1, 2, 3. I mean, we did a big video about this on Monday in many ways. People say it's stupid. People say it's silly. I ain't arguing you there, man. But why would you want that to go away? Like, it made me laugh. It made me feel good. Like, it's pantomime, right? It's just a play that you're seeing in front of real time. So all you have to do is to believe that the characters thought this was happening. Like, we see dumb things in films and movies all the time. I just thought it was a nice way to end it, especially because a lot of it was pretty aggressive. Toni Storm comes out. She feuds away or fights away with Chris Statlander. We're going to do that match. That's the rematch. It does have some jeopardy to it. You could argue you could hot potato that title. You shouldn't. I think Chris Statlander should hold it for a while. And then, of course, John Mox and the Death Riders return and basically tell Darby, I'm going to make you quit by hook or by crook, which is quite the statement. Because think about all the things that Darby has been through. What the hell would you do to him to make him quit? Now, I think Darby should win this match. I think John Moxley saying, I quit, even though we did it at the All In show as well, is massive, and it'll be good for Darby. I'm a bit worried that Fire is going to be involved here. But we wait and see. I actually thought this was going to be an Inferno match. Maybe Tony Khan realizes it's just too hard to pull off, as we've seen time and time again. But just because Flames and Fire have been used so much in the build to this, can I see someone being doused in flames and then saying, I quit? I mean, for better or worse, for good or bad, you'll have to depend on what you want from wrestling. I think the answer could be yes. Orange Cassidy versus Carl Fletcher, the TNT title, was brilliant as well. So Orange Cassidy is great. This is when we got the hologram reveal, but it's the clone who's also joined the Don Callis family. I thought it was a couple of silly things I think that we need to throw out of all wrestling at the moment. If the lights go out, I understand you're trying to trick the audience, but most of the audience knows it's not a technical problem. So Andrade appeared, lights come out. I think we should just say, oh, what's about to happen here? And nobody thought this was hologram when he ran out, clearly as the clone. We, the fans, knew. I think the commentators have to know as well. They were like, why is Hologram attacking Orange Cassidy, which is how the match ended. It wasn't a bad thing. And again, it kind of goes back to my point a minute ago. You can make it hokey and over the top and it doesn't matter. But sometimes it does make people sound silly. It's like, come on, bro. You must know what's going on here. Anyway, he screws over Orange Cassidy. Carl Fletcher gets the win. Retains his TNT title. And when you saw the big shot, the Don Callis family as well, he was bang in the center of it. So look, if it helps Carl Fletcher sort of reestablish himself as a main event player, I don't know. Orange Cassidy, just an underrated gem. There was no need to change a championship here. And actually, it's one of those matches where, this is what I'm talking about when getting into distraction, interference, and confusion. This is why less is more with the DIC stuff, because doing it here sort of really protected Orange Cassidy. It may be sort of other matches and I can't remember. It could just be on me, this one. But it just felt like, oh man, Orange Cassidy got screwed. He's only just come back, and that kind of protects him, which you do want to do because he is one of your biggest stars. And like I say, he's been out for, 8 months with a torn pec, whatever it is. But I just think he's great, as is Kyle Fletcher. The Mark Briscoe stuff I find interesting. I think he should have cut a big promo. I throw Eddie Kingston into there as well. I get that Mark Briscoe is a super duper whooper babyface, but if you beat MJF, there should be a follow-up to this, a championship match, a TNT match, winning some kind of a title and really establishing yourself there. And Eddie Kingston not doing his big old promo, talking about his injury and coming back and almost being relegated to Collision, which may be his choice. I always want to make that clear. He may want to get his confidence back, and whether we want to call them A or B shows or not, more people watch Dynamite, so in that sense, it is the A show. I just think sometimes you need to strike when the iron is hot, but again, if it's what Eddie Kingston wants, I think you should just allow him to do that. But I think it's missing from this show. We just need some super big, loud, happy babyface promises. Kenny Omega did one, obviously before Andrade attacked him, and Mark Briscoe did one here saying he's going to stand by his friend, so he's the nicest guy ever. But I'm not 100% sure the follow-up is, again, you beat MJF, who I deem to be, or at least, 1, 2, 1A at a push. Hangman and Page and MJF are kind of feuding out there at the moment. So I would say that was disappointing. I just think it was a bit of a missed opportunity. And I think we're getting MVP versus Ricochet one-on-one next week in a Street Fight DQ match. It could also be the Hurt Syndicate versus what are they called now? The Denver. That's not right. I can't remember. The Render? No, they're called the Render. I can't remember what Gates Magazine and the Ricochet are called. The Demand. I think they're called the Demand. Either way, MVP was talking about, I'm not interested in pinfalls, and then suggested a match where I'm pretty sure you have to win with a pinfall. It is Title Tuesday next week. At the moment, I think the only title match on the line is Mercedes Moné against somebody, because she cut a promo. So I would get the trios titles on there. I get the tag team titles on there. Well, it's going to be Takeshita and Okada taking on Brodito. I don't know if it's the tag titles at the moment, but that will be when Takeshita does leave. I'd set up a TNT title shot. I'd get as many on there as possible, because yes, if you don't know, NXT and AEW are going to head-to-head next Tuesday. So the usual people will be out in force. Make sure you keep an eye out for them, because they are crazy. But otherwise, a good episode of Dynamite, a really good episode of Dynamite in many ways. There were some foibles for me personally, but the 6-year anniversary thing sort of stands out the most. And that's why I'm kind of glad that Andrade did come back, do something big. If it all goes wrong, we'll all move on the next day anyway, because that's just how professional wrestling works. Now, my voice is going again. Watch the video on Monday if you don't know what I'm talking about. Please do like the video, share the video, and subscribe. Head over to my Patreon at patreon.com/Simon316. Otherwise, it's a bunch of other stuff. You know the deal. Search for Simon316 on social media, Simon at TikTok, Simon Miller, all of that. If you could check out my producing wrestling promos video from the other day. It obviously dialed its ass. It's a brand new concept. It went live Wednesday. I'll make sure I link it below actually as well as in one of the cards. I'd like to see if that's something that's worth doing. It could be a waste of time. I think it's funny, but I do not know. Otherwise, my friends, I appreciate you. See you soon.